Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates. When Fast and Loud first came on Discovery Channel in 2012, it wasn't just another car show. It was amazing. People loved watching two very different guys work together. Richard Rawlings was a fast-talking guy who wore leather jackets and was great at finding old cars and selling them for lots of money. Aaron Kaufman was a bearded car expert who stayed calm, worked slowly and carefully, and paid attention to every tiny detail. They worked perfectly together. One guy brought the excitement, the other brought the skills. The two men knew each other for years before they were ever on TV. Richard was already building his gas monkey garage business, buying and selling cars like a showman. Aaron had quietly become famous in Dallas for fixing cars that other mechanics couldn't fix. Richard once said working together was like a perfect storm. His energy matched with Aaron's perfect work. That mix became what made Gas Monkey Garage special. From the very first season, their plan worked great. Richard would travel around looking for old cars hidden in barns and forgotten classics. He would talk people into deals that most people thought were impossible to make. While Richard was doing that, Aaron would take those beat-up, forgotten cars and slowly bring them back to life. He often had to work under crazy TV deadlines that were almost impossible to meet. The results were amazing: custom Mustangs, famous hot rods, and old trucks that looked new again. They mixed old style with new style in a way that made fans love the show. But while people watching saw two friends following their dreams, behind the cameras, there were already small warning signs. Aaron's need for everything to be perfect sometimes didn't match with Richard's need to work fast and keep making deals. At first, these differences seemed okay, just a bit of friendly pushing and pulling that made the show exciting. But even in those early days, the seeds of trouble were quietly being planted. These would grow into something much more complicated later on. It was the perfect team. But dreams, especially when reality TV cameras are watching, have a way of showing their problems. As Fast and Loud got more popular, there was more pressure to make bigger, flashier cars in less time. Discovery Channel wanted drama, quick work, and amazing reveals that kept people watching. Richard loved that pressure. He was born to be a showman who saw tight deadlines as part of the business. Aaron, however, lived for making perfect cars. He didn't just want a car to look good on camera. He wanted it to run perfectly and last for many years. People who worked there remember times when Richard would want to take a risky shortcut to meet a filming schedule, while Aaron would refuse to give in and wouldn't compromise. These arguments could go on for hours, sometimes leaving the work crew stuck waiting until one of them gave up. The fighting wasn't explosive at first, more like tension that hung in the air during long work days. But it was obvious enough that crew members began to guess which car projects would go smoothly and which would turn into a battle zone. Fans, of course, saw the edited TV-friendly version of these fights, a bit of joking, maybe a smirk from Richard, a serious stare from Aaron. What they didn't see was the after-hours anger, the arguments in the back office, or the fact that both men were starting to see each other less as partners and more as roadblocks. What made this especially dangerous was that both men were stubborn. Richard had built Gas Monkey Garage based on his vision, and Aaron's skills had helped turn that vision into reality. Neither wanted to bend too much. The cracks that began as small creative disagreements were slowly becoming big problems in their partnership. Aaron Kaufman's need for perfection was one of the biggest reasons Fast and Loud was different from other car shows. He had an amazing ability to look at a frame, a weld, or an engine setup and immediately see things that could go wrong. But that same eye for detail became a problem with two sides. When a project was running late, and on a TV show that was almost always the case, Aaron's commitment to getting it right could stop production completely. Crew members remember him throwing away entire sections of work if he wasn't happy with it, even if it meant days of delays. To Aaron, quality was worth the cost. To Richard, missed deadlines meant lost money, angry customers, and possible trouble from TV producers. This wasn't just about building cars well. It was about different ways of thinking. Richard was willing to make certain compromises to keep the business running. Aaron believed the quality of the work came first, no matter what happened. The more cars they built, the more often these priorities clashed. And when they did, the shop's feeling could become tense instantly. Aaron's perfectionism also put pressure on the rest of the work crew. Working under him meant no shortcuts, no cutting corners ever. While some people respected him for it, others found it exhausting. The unspoken question hung in the air. How long could the team keep working at this pace without something breaking down? While Aaron was often shown as the calm, collected balance to Richard's high-energy personality, people who worked there tell a more complicated story. Behind closed doors, Aaron could be unpredictable. Some days, he was relaxed, making jokes with the crew, clearly enjoying the work. Other days, he was withdrawn, irritable, and quick to get angry if something went wrong. Richard, who needed a consistent, positive atmosphere to keep everyone happy, struggled with these changes. You never knew which Aaron you were going to get that day, one former crew member remembered. These mood changes weren't constant, but when they happened, they affected everyone, making other mechanics tense and afraid to ask questions or share ideas. The stress of balancing TV deadlines, constant travel, and being in the public likely played a role. Aaron was a craftsman, not a celebrity, and the endless filming schedule meant his work was always being watched closely. Every car build had to be perfect, every line of dialogue TV ready, and every deadline met, no matter how unrealistic it was. This quiet moodiness didn't always explode into real fights, but it created an unpredictable energy in the shop. And for Richard, who loved control and momentum, that uncertainty would become harder to deal with as the seasons went on. By the middle seasons of Fast and Loud, the disagreements between Richard and Aaron weren't just quiet frustrations anymore. They were turning into open fights. Crew members remember heated arguments over design choices, parts orders, and most of all, last-minute changes from Richard that messed up Aaron's careful plans. Aaron was known for staying calm, but when he felt a project's quality was at risk, his patience would snap. Some of the most tense moments happened when cameras weren't rolling. If a car build was almost finished and Richard decided they needed a visual change for TV wow factor, Aaron often saw it as ruining the hours of precise work already done. These moments could get bad fast, voices raised, tools slammed on workbenches, the rest of the crew pretending to stay focused while trying to block out the noise. One former mechanic remembers a time when wrong parts were delivered and set them back days. Aaron, who was already running on little sleep, exploded, throwing the parts onto the floor and storming out for hours. Richard didn't take it personally at first, but over time, these outbursts began to wear on him. In a high-pressure environment where time was money, bad tempers were becoming as much a part of the job as the car build themselves. The heart of the conflict came down to one simple truth. Richard and Aaron had two very different visions for Fast and Loud. Richard saw the show as an entertainment machine, part business, part spectacle, part hustle. The goal was to keep fans interested, keep sponsors happy, and keep the cars moving in and out of the shop quickly enough to make good television. Aaron, on the other hand, saw each project as a chance to create something lasting, unique, and technically amazing. He was willing to take longer and spend more to make sure every detail was perfect, even if it meant they made no money. This divide started to show up in the car builds themselves. Richard would suggest ideas designed to grab attention, while Aaron would push back, asking for more time, better parts, or a completely different approach. They weren't just disagreeing about how to build cars. They were disagreeing about what the show was supposed to be. And in a shop where the cameras never stopped rolling, those philosophical battles played out with an audience of millions watching, whether fans realized it or not. When Fast and Loud first started, Richard and Aaron had more than just a working relationship. They had friendship. There were late nights spent laughing in the shop, road trips full of inside jokes, and a real sense that they were building something together. But as the seasons passed and the pressure got higher, that easy friendship began to fade. Deadlines replaced fun time. Phone calls turned into production meetings. Conversations that once focused on wild ideas for car builds now revolved around budgets, filming schedules, and contract obligations. The laughter was still there sometimes, but more often the joking fans saw on screen was just part of the act. Richard has admitted that somewhere along the way, the partnership stopped feeling like two friends chasing a dream and started feeling like two bosses trying to run a business under constant public watching. And when a friendship starts to feel like a boardroom negotiation, every disagreement hurts a little more. The bond that made Gas Monkey Garage special was still visible on TV, but behind the scenes, it was showing serious signs of strain. In late 2016, rumors started to spread that something was changing at Gas Monkey Garage. The crew noticed Aaron was quieter, more withdrawn, spending long hours in his corner of the shop, often with the door closed. By early 2017, the news broke. Aaron Kaufman was leaving Fast and Loud. For fans, it was shocking. The show's famous duo was splitting up, and no one had seen it coming. But Richard says, privately, he wasn't surprised. It had been building up for a long time, he later admitted. Aaron's departure was announced without much fanfare. No dramatic final episode, no public fight. In a brief statement, Aaron explained he wanted to explore car builds outside the limits of the show. But people who worked there say the deeper truth was that the creative tension, constant deadlines, and clashing philosophies had reached a breaking point. For Aaron, the joy of building cars was being buried under the pressure of making TV. For Richard, keeping the show on schedule and profitable meant working with someone willing to compromise. In the end, neither man was willing to bend enough to make it work. In the months after Aaron's exit, Richard faced a flood of fan reactions, many questioning the future of Fast and Loud without its master mechanic. While publicly Richard was all business, quick to introduce new talent and keep the car builds rolling, he's since admitted that losing Aaron left a hole in the heart of Gas Monkey Garage. He was the best builder I've ever worked with, Richard has said honestly. We could finish each other's sentences on a car build. But he also knows that their differences were never going to go away. As much as he respected Aaron's skills, the friction between their styles wasn't something they could keep dealing with. Even years later, there's a bittersweet tone when Richard talks about those early days, the barn finds, the road trips, the crazy deadlines they somehow met. The memories are still there, but so is the reality. The partnership that once felt unbreakable had a time limit, and when it was over, there was no going back. By the time Aaron had started his own projects, first shifting gears, then custom builds under his own brand, the writing was on the wall. The split wasn't temporary. There would be no reunion episode, no nostalgic one-off build to bring them back together. Richard has been clear on that point, not in this lifetime. It's not bitterness, he insists, but understanding that what they had worked because of where they were in life at that moment. Both men have moved on, found success in their own ways, and built identities outside the shadow of Gas Monkey Garage. For fans, the absence of that duo still hurts. The chemistry that powered Fast and Loud through its best years is gone for good. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes the best partnerships burn brightest when they're brief, leaving behind stories, car builds, and memories that will never be replicated. And for Richard Rawlings at 55, telling the truth about why it ended is just as important as the legacy they built together.